Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Will on Safety. It has been a little while since I posted any content, so I thought I'd jump back into it with a bit of an introduction to Permit to Work. My name's Will Wright, for those of you that aren't familiar with me. I've been in the health and safety industry since 2015, both as a health and safety consultant and now working in corporate health and safety. So, Permit to Work prerequisites then. Okay, before a person can lead the Permit to Work process, they must have received specific training to be able to fully understand and evaluate the risks and control measures, control requirements relating to the relevant subject areas as listed here, and how they can sort of interact. So what are we saying then? In terms to be able to lead a Permit to Work in each of these disciplines, so we've got working at height, composite panels, asbestos, confined space and excavation, hot work, etc. All we're saying is the person that's going to lead that Permit to Work process must have the relevant experience and skills to be able to understand and evaluate the risks to do with said subject matter. Okay, by the end of this training then you should be able to understand what a Permit to Work is, outline what good looks like when it comes to Permit to Work, explain the roles and responsibilities of those involved in the Permit to Work process, and outline the 3 phases of a Permit to Work. So then, what is a Permit to Work? It's a specialised type of safe system of work under which certain categories of high-risk activities may only be done with the specific permission of an authorised manager. This permission will only be given if the laid down precautions on the permit are in force and, crucially, have been checked. So effectively, we need Permit to Works for those high-risk activities whereby, just by their very nature, just doing a simple risk assessment isn't going to be able to ratify those specific risks. So as well as having a risk assessment, alongside it, due to the high risk nature, we're going to need a Permit to Work. Okay, so what is it? It's a formal written authority to closely control an activity or process, which, following a risk assessment and the formulation of a safe system of work and method statement, a high level of risk still exists. So this is what we were saying on the previous slide. Okay, we've done a risk assessment. There's still a high level of risk, even though we've put in all of our safety control measures. So therefore, we need to do the activity under a Permit to Work. So a Permit to Work can be issued for work done by branch employees or external contractors, and that is a crucial message actually. So what I find in businesses I deal with is we're really good at insisting contractors have to use a Permit to Work for high risk activities, working at height, excavations, confined spaces, electrical, etc. But we don't necessarily ask our own employees to do it, and that's incorrect. Yeah, a Permit to Work is there for everybody to use should there be, following a risk assessment, a high level of risk still remains. Okay then, so Permit to Work activities, we sort of briefly covered them off on previous slides. Yeah, things like working at height, composite panel, asbestos, confined space excavations, hot work, breaking lines. One that you don't see on there but should be a permittable activity is electrical as well. And multiple Permits to Work may well be required for a task. For example, if you're working on a composite panel whilst working at height, you could be working at height and maybe taking down a asbestos concrete roof, for example. So you may well need, depending on the activity, multiple permits in operation. Okay then, so why do we manage the risk? Ultimately, it's to keep us all safe. okay? But on top of that, keeping us all safe, yeah, it can have a positive impact on project success. It's going to identify hazards and potential major incidents. It's going to recognise possible causes and contributing factors. And it's going to effectively manage through appropriate design and controls the risks associated with said task. There are a few benefits of getting it right then. So some of the key benefits are it's going to safeguard company assets. Yeah, if we start having accidents because we're not using permits, company assets can get damaged. It's going to minimise loss and improve profitability. It's going to enhance reputation. Yeah, customers want to work with those contractors and those companies that take health and safety seriously. So if we're having less accidents, if we've got a proper permit to work programme in place, it may well enhance our reputation. It's going to assist in compliance with our legal obligations. We're going to and should see a reduction in incidents, and it's going to enable us to meet timelines. There's nothing worse to push a timeline right than to have an accident. Okay, there are, however, costs of getting it wrong or not using a permit to work programme in the first place. Okay, so when you're watching this video on YouTube, okay, think about, list all the possible outcomes and costs of a failure of a permit to work system. And to be able to really visualise this, we're going to use the cost iceberg. Okay, effectively, what they say on the cost iceberg is for every 1/3 of insured costs, so costs you can insure against, things like injury, ill health and damages, there are 2/3 of uninsurable costs. And they can include things like lost time, production delays, repairs to plant and equipment, sick pay, overtime working, temporary labour, loss of business reputation, damage and loss of product and raw materials, fines, extra wages, production delays, loss of contracts, loss of customers, legal costs. That list is not exhaustive, but they're some of the main points. Okay, so you can see the costs of getting things wrong, okay, can be quite substantial when we look at what we can insure against and what we're unable to insure against. When we're talking about permit to work systems, okay, there are some general failures that we see sort of when we look at permit to work systems, and some of those failures are listed here. So not checking works during the operation, okay, it's all right, contractors come into site, you get them to sign a permit and they let them crack on with what they need to crack on with. However, if we don't go and check those works, how do we know they're conforming with the permit that they've signed on to? Okay, how do we ultimately know that they're conforming with site safety? We need to check work operation to make sure us as the employers are happy with the way the work's being conducted. Okay, goes without saying. Not using fire watchers for hot work permits. Okay, hot work permits are a good one. When we're using hot work permits, we're generally doing some form of hot works out of an authorised hot work area. Okay, so there will be a necessity to use something called a fire watcher. So after the work's completed, that fire watcher stays on 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever the timescales are deemed necessary, and just checks for smouldering, sparks, small fires, that kind of thing, smoke, any signs of fire, okay? Next up, not signing off permits to work. So we're great at making contractors sign on to them. We're great at signing our part. However, when work's complete, if it's the end of the day, maybe we've gone home, we haven't handed it over. Okay, I see day in, day out, permits not being signed off for completion. Okay, so end of a working day, or end of the project or that particular piece of work, we need to get that area checked. If we're happy, we sign those permit to works off. And the big one, and this really is the big one, this is the main thing that we see in terms of failures of permit to work system, is not applying it to ourselves. Okay, we make contractors do it. We don't always, make our own employees do it. And fundamentally, we should be using a permit to work system if we've done a risk assessment and still a high level of risk it is there. So we need to apply it to both contractors and our own employees. Okay, people go, oh, for goodness sake, safety's so expensive. Yep, you're right, safety is expensive. It takes time, cost, money. Yeah, you have to get specialists in sometimes. But hey, if you think safety's expensive and getting things right, think about when things go wrong, because that's when costs really do spiral. As it says there, if you think safety's expensive, try an accident. You're on a whole different level of expense then. Okay, so there are a couple of basics when we're talking about permit to work systems. So for a permit to work effectively, there should be a clear understanding of, how the system works, the job the permit's to be used for, the responsibilities and training of those involved, and how to check its operation. So what we've got here is a very basic permit to work flow chart. So it's permit to work process flow chart. And we'll go into this in the 3 different stages of a permit to work now. Okay, so we've got a safe side and our unsafe side. So first thing we're going to do is identify the job.
Job risk assessed.
Then we're going to
At
risk
this stage,
assess.
The job is risk assessed by the person doing the work. The risk assessment must be suitable and sufficient, and the method statement must detail how the work is to be.
Yeah, method statement must detail how the work is going to be conducted.
The pre-permit checklist must be used to ensure both the risk assessment and the method statement satisfy the requirements of the permit.
So, pre-permit checklist then, when you do a permit to work, it's going to have a list of sort of prerequisites, and it's a sort of yes, no, non-applicable. Okay, so depending on the type of permit, you're going to go down that checklist. It is imperative that as a permit issuer, we go and check that those prerequisites are being met, because if we don't, if we just sign it off, and something goes wrong, that's coming back on us.
The job will get cancelled if the requirements of the permit are not.
Yeah, job gets cancelled if the requirements of the permit are not met.
The working party are gathered on site.
So working party are effectively the contractors, the branch employees, whoever it might be, are gathered and engaged on site, and you're going to go through that permit to work, the permit to work requirements with that working party.
Permit writing and completion. The appointed competent person will fill out the permit to work, checking that each requirement of the permit is satisfied. They are to personally inspect the site to ensure that the conditions and proposed control measures are enforced.
Yeah, so we're going to go through the permit. Those prerequisites, need to be in place. It is down to the permit writer, the permit issuer, to go and check those, get visual identification on what needs to happen and what's actually happened. If we're happy, we're going to progress down the process here. If we're not, we're going to circle back and get those deficiencies rectified.
Permit authorization. The appointed competent person is to brief the person doing the work and ensure they understand and agree to the conditions of the permit. Both parties are then to sign the permit to confirm they are happy to proceed. Yeah,
so site foreman or your branch personnel that are going to be managing the high risk activity are going to go through the permit with the permit issuer. You're both going to agree on actions, on control measures, etc. And then you're both going to sign on to that permit.
The permit to work is now issued. A copy is given to the site foreman. A copy is to be visible at the specific work area, and a copy is to be retained at a site centralised location, such as a permit to work.
Yeah, so copy to the person doing the work, copy to the work area. So if it's barried off, for example, you put a copy of the permit on on the barriered off area and your site centralised location. The work then gets started.
Workplace check. A workplace check is to be conducted using the workplace inspection sheet. If the work area does not satisfy the inspection, modifications must be implemented as...
Okay, so the whole point of a workplace check, okay, we're going to go and check that the conditions of the permit are being met. If they're not being met, we stop the work, we get the modifications made before the work's allowed to continue. Once we've done that, the work gets completed.
If the working party and the appointed competent person are happy, the job gets signed off. If either party raises any issues, modifications are to be made as necessary.
Okay, so on work completion, what we're going to do is go and do a verification, firstly, that the work's been completed. And what we're really looking at is to make sure that the area's been left in a clean, tidy and safe, ultimately, condition for it to be used as it should be used. So if any of the parties have got any concerns, what will happen is we'll raise those issues, we'll circle back, get the necessary modifications made, come back and check it. Once both parties are happy, the permit to work is going to get signed off. Okay, so these are some of the different people that are going to be involved in the permit to work process. So we've got site manager there. Site manager has overall responsibility and accountability for the operation and management of the permit system. They're going to appoint a senior authorised person to oversee the day-to-day operation of the permit system. You're going to have an authorised person. Okay, they're going to be responsible to the site manager for the operation of the permit system. Okay, they're going to define the work on the site which requires a permit. They're going to ensure that they're going to ensure that people responsible for the work are competent to do so. They may well appoint all necessary authorised persons, appoint a deputy to act in their absence. Yeah, then you've got appointed competent person, so the permit issuer. They're going to issue permits to competent persons and retain the copies. They're going to personally inspect the site to ensure that the conditions and proposed control measures of the permit are in place and adequate and it's safe to work. They're going to ensure that the competent person understands the requirements as set out by the permit to work, and they're going to cancel the permit on satisfactory completion of the work. Competent persons are the people doing the work, okay? So the competent persons are the persons doing the work or a contractor. They should receive the permit from an appointed competent person. They're going to read the permit and make sure they fully understand its requirements. They're going to signify their acceptance of the permit by signing on to it. They're going to comply with the permit and make sure that those they have responsibility for comply with its requirements. On completion of the work, they're going to return the permit to the appointed competent person who issued it. And then finally, not quite finally, but you've got the working party. They're going to read it or get briefed on the requirements of the permit and comply with those requirements under the supervision of the competent person. If it's a hot work permit, all members of the working party ideally would sign on to that. Okay, and contractors, again, contractors' working party is similar, but contractors must be appropriately selected and competent. Contractors must receive an induction of the work site. The permit system should be applied to contractors in exactly the same way as it's applied to employees. The contractor must be given adequate information on the permit system, the restrictions it imposes, and the precautions it requires. And then finally, we've got specialists. So specialists are not there to help and advise. Specialists are there to help and advise, not to assume responsibility for the permit system. So there may well be let's take working with asbestos, for example. Yeah, if I'm not an asbestos specialist, we may well then have to get advice from an asbestos specialist to be able to get the works complete. So 3 stages of permit to work then. Yeah, before the job starts, we're going to conduct a suitable and sufficient risk assessment. We're also going to develop a safe system of work. Okay, implement pre-permit measures, verify pre-activity measures, the working party of contractors to be briefed on the conditions of the permit to work. We're going to agree a period of validity of the permit. Yeah, the works might take a few hours, a day, a couple of days. So it's important that we verify the length of time that permit is going to be open. Issue an acceptance of the permit, and then we're going to discuss the importance of signatures with everybody that's involved with the permit to work system. So during the job, multiple permits may well be in operation. 3 copies of each permit to work will be produced. One to be kept at the specific work location. Again, it might be on a barrier or on a notice board in the general area. One will be at the site centralised location. So normally, where your permit to works are issued from, there'll be a permit to work board. Okay, and one will be given to the person in charge of doing the works. It can be a site foreman, something like that. We should be doing proactive monitoring of all activities, and everybody will have an authority to stop an activity if the permit to work conditions are not being met. Okay, we're going to complete the activity and make the work area safe. Okay, if you complete the activity, okay, we're going to clean up, tidy up, make sure the area is safe. This is even more important if the activities say the job's going to take a couple of days or whatever. At the end of the working day, the area needs to be put in a safe condition. Okay, and that needs to make the site management team happy as well as contractors happy before that permit's closed down for the night. After the job's finished, okay, we're going to close the permit to work, return the site plant area to normal operations, record keeping, accounting and storage. Okay, so we should be keeping permits to work. 3 copies of the permit to work are brought back together for the sign off. Okay, normally it's in a carbon copy book, so all 3 parts need to come back together. The sign off's there, and then you'll get your signature on all 3 copies. And then we're going to review the activity and consider lessons to be learned. Okay, as part of our continual improvement process, after every sort of high risk activity, after every big project, we should be thinking about how did that go, what was good, what was bad, what can we improve. And that's it, folks. I hope you found that introduction to permit to work useful. Obviously, the way people do permit to work differs slightly. I think that's a good process, really simple to understand. I hope you found it useful. I hope that's given you an insight into permit to work so you can understand it's not as scary as it might seem. Please leave any comments. Let me know what you thought of the video. Did you think it was beneficial? Did you gain some value from that? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. If you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button on Will on Safety. That's going to enable my channel to grow. I'm trying to build a community